Hey folks, this is Tennyson E Stead, writer and director of Quantum Theory, founding member of 8-Sided Films, here with another 8-Sided blog. And today I'd like to talk a little bit about my relationship with you, actually. I'm here, just to be clear, what you're seeing behind me, I'm house sitting for a dear friend, so this gorgeous kitchen does not belong to me. But I come here frequently and I start thinking about well, it's a big empty space. So I start thinking. And one of the other things I do usually while I'm here is I tend to play a lot of video games, because since my brain injury, I've found that it's rewarding to have a forum for interaction with people where my brain injury isn't as much of a factor. And of course, video games being what they are, I still get trolled for bad performance, which sometimes is because I can't quite, do the thing, but yeah, I trust the MMR to work it out. Anyways, the point is that I do video games, I watch some YouTube, I think, and this particular stay here has brought me back to some comments that were made 3 or so years ago when I finished writing the developmental breakdown. I asked a good friend of mine, who was not a good friend of mine at the time, VK Lin, who's a musician, what I could do to use the developmental breakdown to better my relationship with folks like you and with my audience, with my larger filmmaking community. And one of the pieces of advice that she's given me, which is something that I've been seeing YouTubers do very effectively, people like Megan Turney and MF Pallytime have shown me that she's right. What VK suggested to me is that I needed to be much more autobiographical and much more personal in the information that I give out. And I'm gonna try, because I've seen it done really well over the last couple of weeks, specifically by those two YouTubers, and it's been a wake-up call and a lesson for me that I'm paying attention to. So today, I just wanted to talk a little bit about my own life and why it is that I haven't been as personal. And the simple truth is that I have some very clear, overarching objectives in the work we're doing with 8-Sided Films. When I bring people into a theater, and bringing people into a theater is ultimately how I envision what I do, and it's what's most meaningful to me. I grew up in the theater. Theater communities are where I come from, and selling tickets is something I understand. And a room full of people who are watching something together it becomes an entity unto itself, and I'm fascinated with how that entity works, the relationship between a show and an audience in real time. Is something that I've grown up with, and it means something to me. And when I bring those people together, the most important thing for me is that I give them something, and I give them an experience to have in common. I give them something in common that they didn't have before. And it's okay if that thing in common is something that they have to work for. I don't mind if it's difficult to get there. I just want to make sure that I'm providing them with an opportunity to connect that's larger than the opportunity to drive themselves further away from one another. And frankly, I think if they have to work a little harder for that connection, the connection's going to wind up being stronger in the end, because the connection that they achieve isn't as easy a connection, which means their relationship can take a stronger hit. It makes them more unified because they're finding commonalities or just understanding mutual something on a deeper level. All right. So with that being said, my life has been all the way from childhood very, very strange. The reason why they say truth is stranger than fiction is because fiction at the end of the day has structure, some kind, even if it's an untraditional structure, even if a director or a novelist or an artist is doing something that no one's ever done before, they're still imposing some kind of sense of aesthetic and some kind of pattern to whatever it is that they're creating. And that pattern tells the audience that they can trust the artwork from beginning to end. They can find something in there that's what the artist has put in there for them to find. And apart from that experience, there's not supposed to be anything dangerous about it. Maybe the thing that they're supposed to find is danger. Maybe that's what they're there to find, but the audience gets to trust that that's what's in there and that there's no other dangers, that the artist has controlled the environment around that danger, even if it is difficult art. so that the audience can grapple with it and deal with it and find a way through it without getting hit by something else. You see what I mean? And life does not work like that. Life doesn't have that kind of safety to it. And so the fact that I've experienced so many strange things in my life makes the people in my own life have a hard time finding safety in my life. And in part, that's because right now I'm a traumatic brain injury patient learning how to use my body again while I make movies. That's an incredibly ambitious goal. And it's something, even my doctors have trouble with it. I can't describe the number of conversations I've had where people can't see how I'm taking good care of myself and can't see how, I could possibly be meeting all of my needs. And the truth is I'm not meeting all of my needs, but I'm doing a very good job of making the work that I'm doing sustainable. And the work that I'm doing meets needs that I can't meet otherwise. So I'm driven forward. And, just to create a sort of sense of the range of weirdness that my life has encompassed, I've managed a neuroscience laboratory for 2 years, which I did with a theater degree and frankly had no logistic business doing, but I'm a quick learner and a smart guy, and I saw that that's what they needed, and I was curious, very curious. And I learned a lot about neuroscience. It was right in the 90s when plasticity theory was sort of booming and people were really beginning to understand how memory works, and it was a cool time to be in neuroscience. I've taken vows of silence and non-communication of any kind for as long as a week and lived in the mountains while I did it and achieved deeper understandings of myself in that process. I've had experiences that anyone would describe as either religious or spiritual, that have shattered my worldview numerous times over and forced me to reconsider my place in the world. And then I've decided, in the wake of many of those experiences, that the help or advice or support that I would get from any kind of spiritual leader wasn't strong enough to meet my needs. And I've sort of worked my own way through those experiences and come to my own understandings. And I've been to space camp a bunch of times. I went to one of the most prestigious boarding schools in the country when I was young. And I've got stories from all corners of this strange, weird life in a lot of ways. Brain damage, while extremely disruptive and certainly the most challenging thing that I've done up until now, is by no means the strangest to me. It's not as completely shattering to my understanding of the world. It definitely is the most shattering with regards to my place in that world. And, and one of the things that I've come to understand is that's okay. Understandings fall apart. Right? No understanding of the world is perfect, and at some point information is going to come along that smashes it to little tiny pieces, and one of the best things we can do for ourselves in that situation is not panic. And, so why don't I share all of these stories? Why? And why am I not just willy-nilly? Because I want to provide audiences and you with the opportunity to sit down and share a story with the person next to you on even turf, even if you're going to see it a different way than the person sitting next to you. There's no way you won't. You're your own individual. You've got your own experiences. You've got your own prejudices and your own idea of how the world works. And something in this story is going to validate that. Something in this story is going to upset it. But the fact that it's fiction and the fact that I made it up and the fact that we're doing it with actors and it is what it is, it gives you the opportunity to see it a little more objectively and step past some of those, to get past the initial rejection that we have when something doesn't necessarily validate our worldview, and just watch what you're watching. Watch a person in the situation that I'm presenting deal with it in their own way, and that individual, that character in the story, is the thing that everybody gets to either judge or get behind or whatever the case may be. But that character becomes, our mutual entry point into whatever experience I'm providing people with, whatever experience I've decided people should have the chance to have in common. So what I don't want to do, and what I have to be careful of, and what I'm going to be conscious of to the best of my ability as I start being a little more forthcoming about who I am and where I come from and all that kind of stuff, is I don't want to tell stories, even about myself, even if they're true, that drive a wedge in between my audience. I don't want people to have to decide whether or not my own life experience is trustworthy, or whether my own understanding of that life experience is trustworthy, because truth is stranger than fiction, and therefore truth is more divisive. If our current economic and political situation teaches us nothing else, it's how divisive truth can be. People will reject truth out of hand, and that's not what I'm here for. I'm here to help people gain a deeper, more specific appreciation of one another. I want people to sit down in the audience and walk away with the ability to see one another in a little bit more of a specific light. And going back to some of the things that I've talked about in the developmental breakdown and other previous blogs, what I can do with each movie is basically two of the three following things. I can delight people in very specific ways, I can inspire people in very specific ways, and I can challenge people in very specific ways. I can do two of those three things in any one movie. Three, and it starts to get very messy and muddy, and I break the trust with the audience. One, and it's boring and not interesting or deep enough. But I can show a character doing something that accomplishes two of those three things. Quantum Theory, which is our next big feature, is definitely an inspire and delight movie. It's not the most challenging movie ever. Declassified, which is our web series, which we have coming up, is definitely a challenge and inspire, I think. Not much delight. People define delight in different ways, but, unless you like watching people in pain. But it's inspiring and it is challenging, That's what's fun about it. So, right up front, I just wanted to say, basically, that I'm going to try to be a little more personal, and I'm going to try to be a little more open about my history. And this isn't a disclaimer, because I'm still responsible for how the stories that I tell bring this audience together. That's my responsibility. I just also hear that I need to bring more of my personal self. The work, my screenplays, there's no question that I'm deeply invested emotionally. There's no question that there's a huge personal investment there. But in my communications with you and how I handle the showpersonship side of our company, how I handle community building, I need to bring more of a personal, I hate the word touch, but I need to be more real and more emotionally available in this process. And okay, so first of all, VK, I heard you. It took me a little while. If she's watching this, she's definitely laughing at me right now. I'm definitely going to get a text about what a silly asshole I am. And that's okay. That's why I love her. So, heard you, took me a year. And to everybody else, just please understand that the thing that I'm building this company for, and the thing that I want to give, and the thing that's most important to me about all of this, and frankly, the thing I think we're missing, in our culture, the thing that has created so many of the problems that we have right now and that we're lacking, is the sense of specificity, having our patience for details and our appreciation for details in one another and in the world around us, whether it's a stack of information and statistics, or whether it's the nuance of a performance, or the nuance of a person's habits and manners and being. is not reinforced by our culture. We're taught to understand each other more and more in generalities, whether it's a stereotype or whether it's an archetype. And that kills our patience for detail, and it kills our appreciation of one another, and it's not good for us. So I'm going to share a little bit more of my specificity, but I'm also going to ask for your patience, because one of the things that makes me great at my job is that I do live a life that not everybody can live, and I live a life that does, in many ways, isolate me from other people. I don't want my life to isolate me from you. I want my work to bring us together. So that's the balance that I'm going to struggle to achieve. I'm not great at it. I never have been. But I'm going to take a step forward, and I'll ask you to take it with me. And I'll encourage other folks in the eight-sided, ensemble to do the same. I'll ask them as they come on the blogs, people like Gerard and Dan and other folks who might come and speak. I'll ask them to tell some personal stories and share a little bit, not just about what they're doing with us and what it means to them, but how they fit into the world, so that you can see more clearly who we are. And I'm going to do it because I love you. I hope you know that. That's the first thing I need to say, is that the people who watch our work and the people who support our work and the people who share in these stories with us are people who, the one thing they all have in common is that they're hungry for that specificity. They're hungry for a more refined way to understand one another, and they're willing to do it through dorky stories about spacemen and dinosaurs and stuff, and whatever else we come up with. And it's pretty wonderful to me. So thank you all very much for that. I love you very much. And this is Tennyson E Stead signing off.